What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Marcus and in this video I'm going to give you a tier list of the best brawlers, basically from low tier to high tier of this month. So please make sure you stay until the end of the video, because at the end of this video you will be able to see the entire tier list. You can't see it right now because we will go through every brawler individually by giving them one strength and one weakness. So yeah guys, please make sure you stay until the end. Then at the end you will have a very good overview of the best brawlers of this month. So let's dive into the video. As I already said, I'm going to give every brawler basically a quick strength, what they're familiar of, and one weakness. And let's start at the bottom at tier F. And here we have Byron and Barley. And for Byron and Barley, they both have in common that their biggest weakness is basically their low health. And their low health is the reason that I've put these at the bottom, because that is a very big downside of the two of these. Then let's move up to D. There we have Dynamite and Mortis. And Dynamite and Mortis, actually Dynamite has a very high burst damage, so this can come in very handy. But the downside of Dynamite is that he is very vulnerable when he is in his focus mode. So yeah, that's his downside. And then Mortis. Mortis is of course known for his high mobility, but his weakness is that it requires a lot of skill to reach his potential. So he is a pretty good brawler, but it will require a lot of skill in order to reach his high potential, and it will also require a lot of time. And that's not something you're looking forward in the beginning, because there are way better alternatives. And some good alternatives are already in the C tier. And let's start with the C tier. In the C tier we have Sprout. And Sprout is known for his strong area control. But his weakness is again the low health. So for the strong area control he is very good, but the low health is a big ache. Then we have Max, strength, high mobility. His weakness is the average damage output. So yeah, you can do what you want with Max. Stu, again high mobility, low health again. Bea, strength is high burst damage. We saw that already. There aren't very much players with a really good high burst damage. And the strength of Bea is not that the high burst damage is better than some that we're going to see at tier A, for example. So it is all right, but it's not very good. And the biggest downside of Bea is that Bea is vulnerable when abilities are on cooldown. So let's move on to Colt then. Colt is known for his high damage output. Biggest weakness of him is that it requires precision to be effective, and the precision also comes with skill in the game. So when you're good at the game, this can come in handy, but when you're just starting out, then it will take some time in order to get the required precision for this brawler Colt. And then Fang. Fang also high burst damage, but it requires close proximity to be effective. Then we have Brock. Brock is also known for high burst damage, but he is vulnerable at close range, so he can lose a lot of health when he is at close range. And the high burst damage, of course, is effective when you are on close range. So this makes Brock very vulnerable when playing with him. So you better be prepared for that. Then Shelly. Shelly also high burst damage, but vulnerable at long range. So this is actually better than Brock, because vulnerable at long range, that's not something you will be in very often with Shelly, because when you're focusing on the high burst damage, you're trying to be close to your enemy. So this is actually very good for Shelly, but we will come into way better brawlers in a little bit. So let me move on to Lou. Biggest strength of Lou is the strong crowd control. The biggest weakness is the average damage output. Then we have Carl. The high versatility is his biggest strength. His weakness is that it requires skill to maximize his potential. And as I already said, this requires a lot of time and playing the game. So if you're playing the game a lot already, and in the future you want to play the game a lot more, then of course this won't be a problem for you. So Jean has very strong crowd control, but the weakness is the low consistent damage. And Penny has strong area control, and biggest weakness is average damage output. Then Janet, a high burst damage, but biggest weakness is vulnerable when abilities are on cooldown. 8-bit, high damage output, but very slow movement. Very slow player, slow brawler, but high damage. So it's difficult to get a good balance in the two of these, because you want players to be fast and quick, but of course you also want a high damage. But the combination of these two isn't very good in my opinion. So let's move on to Otis. Otis' biggest strength is versatile abilities, and his biggest weakness is the average stats overall. Then Willow, biggest strength, strong crowd control. Biggest weakness is the low damage output. And Edgar, biggest strength is high mobility and burst damage. Weakness, low health. And then finishing off the C tier with Crow. His biggest strength is high mobility and poison damage, but his biggest weakness is the low health. And now it is getting more interesting, I can tell you guys, because we are moving on to the B tier. And this actually is a pretty good group, but let's just start off with Piper. Piper, she has a very high burst damage, but she is vulnerable at close range. Then Surge has a very high versatility, but the biggest weakness is requires upgrades to be effective. Then Rico, high damage output is his biggest strength. Biggest weakness is low health. And actually low health is something we see a lot with brawlers we reviewed until now. So that's something that maybe causes it for them to be in a low tier. My opinion about that is that this indeed causes that they are in a low tier, because low health is a no-go zone actually in Brawl Stars. So let's move on to Poco. Poco then has strong healing abilities. So this is already something that mitigates the low health. So the strong healing abilities can come in very handy. But the biggest weakness then is low damage output. So you can basically see Poco as like some sort of medic, from shooting games or something like that. But let's move on to El Primo, high health and damage. So as you already can see, now we're coming into the good brawlers. So we're moving up, and we see at El Primo high health and damage. So this is very good. And the weakness is that, of course, the range is limited. So let's move on to Bell. Bell's biggest strength is the high damage output. Biggest weakness is vulnerable when focused. Tick, his biggest strength is strong area control. Weakness is that his health is very low. And that is even different from the other brawlers we had where the health was low as a weakness. At Tick it is very low, so be cautious for that. Then Ems, biggest strength is the strong area control. Weakness, the average damage output. Then we'll move on to Mandy. Her biggest strength is the high damage output, and the biggest weakness is the low health. Bo, biggest strength, strong area control. Greatest weakness, average damage output. So its average it's not very low or something like that, but it's average. It doesn't do the job, I would say. For the area control it does, but for the damage it doesn't. Then Nani, the biggest strength is the high burst damage, so good for close range. And biggest weakness is that Nani is vulnerable when it's using the super. Then Bull, biggest strength, high health and damage. Weakness, slow movement. Then Daryl, biggest strength is the high burst damage. Weakness is it requires close proximity to be effective. Then Pam, biggest strength is the strong support abilities. Weakness is limited range. We have Chester, high damage output. Weakness is low health. High damage output has biggest strength. Gus, biggest strength is high versatility. Greatest weakness is requires skill to maximize potential. We have Chuck. Biggest strength is strong area control. The greatest weakness is limited mobility. Then Amber. Amber's biggest strength is the high burst damage. Greatest weakness is vulnerable when out of ammo. And Gale, greatest strength is strong crowd control. But weakness is average damage output. So again, these players, these brawlers won't do the job for you. Then we have Grom. Strength is high area control, but vulnerable when focused. That's his greatest weakness. Colette's greatest strength, strong against high health targets. And the greatest weakness is low consistent damage. And then finishing off the B tier with Lola, with greatest strength, high damage output, greatest weakness that it requires skill to maximize potential. And again, as I've already said it, this is just a time issue, playing a lot, getting the skill you need for this. So now we have finished off the B tier as well. And now it is getting really interesting, because now we're moving on to the A tier. So these players are very good, these brawlers, I must say, of course. Yeah, guys, so now it's getting very interesting. We are at the A tier. So let's just dive into the A tier here. Starting with Miko. Miko's biggest strength is the versatile abilities. Greatest weakness is that his overall stats are very average. So nothing is very standing out. So that is for sure a weakness. Then Buzz, greatest strength is the high mobility, we know from Buzz. And greatest weakness is that it requires close proximity to be effective. Then Griff. Griff's greatest strength is the high damage output. Greatest weakness is that it's vulnerable when abilities are on cooldown. That's a very big downside on Griff, because Griff isn't able to do anything at this point when abilities are on cooldown. So then it's of course better to hide or something, or to camp or play a little bit on the low. Then moving on to Bibi. Bibi's greatest strength is the high burst damage. The weakness is that the range is very low of Bibi. So keep that in mind. Ruff's greatest strength, strong support abilities. Greatest weakness, average damage output. And for strength, I meant that Ruff's has a very strong supportive abilities. But the average damage output is a little bit, it won't do the job. It's average, but it's more close to low damage output than I would say that it is close to high. So that is a very big downside of Ruffs. Then let's move on to Kit. Kit has a high versatility. The greatest weakness is that it requires skill to maximize potential. Spike then. Very high damage output. Greatest weaknesses is low health. Leon, high burst damage. Greatest weakness is that it's vulnerable when visible. So yeah, when you're like a player that's good to hide itself and counter on the perfect moments, then Leon is a very good player for you. He will do the job for this. So that's for Leon, I'm sorry. Let's move on to Tara then. Tara's greatest strength is the strong crowd control, weakness, the average health. So the health is a very big thing in here. Moving on to Frank. Frank has very high health and damage. So Frank is, when it comes to health and damage output, a very good player, one of the best actually in the game. But the weakness, again, slow movement. But because of this high health and damage, it is very doable to play with Frank. So this is not an issue for Frank, and this will do the job. Moving on to Bonnie now. Bonnie has high burst damage, very low health. Mr. P, strength is strong area control. Greatest weakness, vulnerable when alone. Then Rosa, biggest strength is the high health and defense, and that is something you don't see a lot at different brawlers. So Rosa is very specific, very special in this with the defense and health. But weakness is the limited range. Then Hank. Hank's biggest strength is his high durability, and his greatest weakness is his slow movement again. Then Maisie, greatest strength, high mobility. Biggest weakness is the low damage output. Cordelius, almost finished with the A tier. Now we are finally moving on to the S tier, to the God tier, as you could say. Cordelius, strong crowd control as his biggest strength. Weakness, again, the low health. Then RT, greatest strength is the strong support abilities. Biggest weakness is that he's weak alone. So when you're playing with him on his own, it will be very weak. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Then the last of this tier, that's Pearl. Greatest strength is the high damage output, weakness is the low health. And with Pearl, we have finished off the A tier. And now we can finally move on to the S tier, the best brawlers of this month. And let's not wait any longer and start off with Jessie. And Jessie's greatest strength is the versatile and strong turret. But the weakness is the low burst damage. But I won't really see this as a very great weakness, because the strength, like the versatility and the strong turret is very special. So Jessie she deserves to be in this tier. Then Nita, greatest strength, versatile attack, and super. Weakness is that it requires bear to be effective. So when you're a really focused player, I would say Nita is your go-to. This is a very good brawler. So let's move on to Sam. Sam's strength is high mobility. Weakness is it's squishy. Again, low health. So that's not very good. Sandy, greatest strength, strong area control. Weakness, average damage output. Jackie, greatest strength is the high health, but weakness is the short attack range. Then Charlie is known for the high burst damage and strength. Weakness, vulnerable when abilities are on cooldown. Then Eve, strength, high mobility. Weakness, low health. That's not very good. But of course, don't get me wrong, these players are in the S tier for a reason. But I'm just trying to be as realistic as possible. I'm mentioning the things that I think are most important in playing Brawl Stars the best way there is. So don't get me wrong when I'm a little bit short on some brawlers. Let's move on to Larry and Laurie, actually. Larry and Laurie are known for the strong area control, but the weakness is the slow movement. Of course, they are with two players, so that's the reason why the movement is, of course, slow. Then Meg's biggest strength is the powerful super ability, but weakness is the weak base form. So the difference between the super and the base is very large, actually. So then when you're playing like in moments, so you are a very patient player and you're patient enough to wait for the supers, then Meg is a very good player for you. But when you're not able to do this, you're more like a rusher. You wanna rush, then Meg is not your go-to, I would say. Then let's move on to Ash. Ash's greatest strength is the high damage output, but the weakness is that it requires close proximity to be effective. Then Dog. Dog's greatest strength is his versatile abilities, and weakness is the average stats overall. And that's, of course, something that's not very handy, to have the average stats a little bit overall. Not bad, of course, because Dog is not in the S tier for nothing. But I wouldn't. I'm not a player who likes the average stats like an overall. I want a player to be good overall. For example, with compensating it with high health or high damage. But with Dog, it's just average. Then let's move on to Angelo. Angelo's greatest strength is the good crowd control, but weakness is that it's vulnerable to long range attacks. Then Buster. Buster's greatest strength is high defense, so defensively very good, maybe the best. But greatest weakness is the slow attack speed. But when it comes to defense, Buster is the best in the game, I would say. Then Melody. Melody is known for its strong healing abilities as a great strength, but as weakness, the limited offensive capabilities. So Buster and Melody for healing is perfect. That's actually great. And especially with Melody, the healing abilities. So that's really a brawler that heals very rapidly and strongly. So keep that in mind when picking between these two in terms of defense. Then let's move on to Lily. Lily is known for its high burst damage, but weakness, low health. And then let's finish off the S tier with Vanguard. Greatest strength, high durability, but biggest weakness, the slow movement. So that's basically it, guys. That is the tier list of this month. Let me know in the comments what you think about this ranking. Yeah, who would you rank in a different spot, in a different place? Let me know. Are there things that you don't agree on with me? Of course, feel free to comment. Like this video if you liked the tier, the ranking. So please make sure you do that. Also, please make sure to subscribe for more Brawl Stars content in the future, for more rankings, for more tier lists and content about Brawl Stars. Yeah, I would really appreciate if you guys do. So then I'm ending off this video. Thanks for watching, and then I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.